You are now listening to The Forefront Radio, where we discuss history, the Bible, the history of the Israelites, science, and other matters. Bring it out. The history of the blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans as it relates to the Bible. Who were you prior to slavery? Who were you prior to colonization? These answers and more can be seen and heard as you listen to The Forefront Radio.
Judah.
Heaven is right here with you. Heaven is right here with you.
Yeah.
Heaven is right here with you.
Okay.
Heaven is right here with you.
I'ma speak to him. Yo. The
Purchase
preacher.
your tracks today.
Everything written, it's written for learning. Would you gonna believe it? What a God only false prophet, yeah.
Another one.
Know your history, yeah. Know what you're saying to me. Same people say you can't teach you about God leave. Never trust. A system that will always be broken. Cause they hate us. Yeah, they hate us.
When the sun comes down, so does their understanding. Whether it's Christ's bright light or the one commandment. Our eyes water for the horror sure have caused wells. They yet fail, plus we're caught up wanting vain help. We lost hope, our shepherds soft spoke. They scoff quotes, misinterpreting in soft cloaks. Off scope, with reproach and they exhaust dopes. Somebody tell a modern Christian that their cross broke. Of whom do their households take counsel? What amounts when the counts mount doubtful? Why they cover with the coverings of other things? They love sin and will discover it ain't of the king. The plan was basic for the band who once had rain plantations. Tell a man is glamorous and man is handsome naked. Plant their hatred, cancel patience, amputate their nation. The clan that ran the races handed famous lamentations.
Everything written, it's written for learning. Would you gonna believe it? What a God only false prophet, yeah.
Your tracks
Know
today.
your history, yeah. Know what you're saying to me. Same people say you can't teach you about God leave. Never trust. A system that will always be broken. Cause they hate us. Yeah, they hate us. Never trust. A system that will always be broken. Cause they hate us. Yeah, they hate us.
Lord, I'm yearning, pages be turning, flipping through scriptures, comfort I'm searching, things before time written for learning, patiently waiting, salvation I'm searching, Babylon burning, sinners gon' purge them, take away oppression like a dream turning, better wake up, high time that you're learning, black man coming like a boogie when you owe him, 4th of July, Christmas is lies, Easter is lies, pagan surprise, proof in the pudding, religion is doodoo, is worse than a voodoo, criminal Zulu, better realize that Christ ain't white, all these lives gonna die, for the laws that they despise, Forrest Gump gonna die, trumped up charges, basking in barges, basking in robbers, 31 flavors and targets, lamentations, we waiting in vain for a nation that got problems to solve them, absolve them, Washington guy, we on the rise, they in decline, honoring cycle, they got the nerve to swear on the Bible, right?
Never trust. A system that will always be broken. Cause they hate us. Yeah, they hate us.
Thank you for tuning into the Forefront Radio. I'm your host, Afiel Levi. At this time, we're going to go to the chapter of Second Maccabees in our discussion right now, and Mattathias' response to Antiochus coming against our people. So we're starting at First Maccabees chapter 2 at verse 19. Then Mattathias answered and spake with a loud voice. Though all the nations that are under the king's dominion obey him, and fall away every one after the religion of their fathers, and give consent to his commandments, yet will I and my sons and my brethren walk in the covenant of our fathers. God forbid that we should forsake the law and the ordinances. We will not hearken to the king's words, to go from our religion, either on the right hand or the left. So we see Mattathias here coming up and arising and saying with a loud voice to all the people that was around under the king's dominion that they would not succumb to assimilation. You see, the way that the Greeks were living at this time were so abominable to our Hebraic ancestors. Our ancestors were very conservative. They conduct themselves well with honor and dignity and integrity. And the Greeks were involved in all manner of debauchery. We're going to look at a historical document that proves that point. Verse 23. Now when he had left off speaking these words, there came one of the Jews in the sight of all to sacrifice on the altar, which was at Modin, according to the king's commandment. Which thing, when Mattathias saw, he was inflamed with zeal, and his reins trembled. Neither could he forbear to show his anger according to judgment. Wherefore he ran and slew him upon the altar. And the king's commissioner, who compelled men to sacrifice, he killed at that time, and the altar he pulled down. Thus dealt he zealously for the law of God, like as Phinehas did unto Zambri the son of Salam. And Mattathias cried, and throughout the city with a loud voice, saying, Whosoever is zealous of the law, and maintaineth the covenant, let him follow me. So we see here that just in the same way that Phinehas was coming into the land and seeing Israel partake in adultery and fornication with the Moabites, right? Partaking in their sacrificing and idolatry, was the same way that Mattathias was zealous to keep our people from profaning themselves by partaking in the sacrifice of the heathen, eating swine's flesh and all of this stuff. So you have a great situation that happens here where he's telling people, look, if you're zealous for the law of the Most High and maintaining the covenant of our ancestors, then follow me. That's what he did. All right. Verse 28. So he and his sons fled into the mountains and left all that ever they had in the city. Then many that sought after justice and judgment went down into the wilderness to dwell there. Okay. So further on in the story, you find out that there were a group of Jews that were still around in the city, black Jews, and the Greeks came in and set up encampments to fight them. And what ended up happening is they were fighting on the Sabbath day, and they decided because it was Sabbath that they would not fight against the Greeks coming in, because the Sabbath was a holy day to our ancestors. So the Greeks came in and did this. It says, howbeit they answered him not, neither cast they a stone at them, nor stopped the places where they lay hid. Verse 37. But said, let us die all in our innocency. Heaven and earth shall testify for us that ye put us to death wrongfully. So they rose up against them in battle. So the Greeks rose up against our ancestors in battle on the Sabbath, and they slew them with their wives and children and their cattle, to the number of 1,000 people. Now when Mattathias and his friends understood hereof, they mourned for them right sore. And one of them said to another, If we all do as our brethren have done, and fight not for our lives and laws against the heathen, they will now quickly root us out of the earth. At that time, therefore, they decreed, saying, Whosoever shall come to make battle with us on the Sabbath day, we will fight against him, neither will we die all, as our brethren that were murdered in the secret places. Then came there unto him a company of Assyrians, who were mighty men of Israel, even all such as were volunteered devotedly unto the law. Also, all they that fled for persecution joined themselves unto them, and were a stay unto them. So they joined their forces, and smote sinful men in their anger, and wicked men in their wrath, but the rest fled to the heathen for succor. Then Mattathias and his friends went round about, and pulled down the altars, and what children soever they found with the coast of Israel uncircumcised, those they circumcised valiantly. They purposed also after the proud men, and the work prospered in their hand. So they recovered the law out of the hand of the Gentiles, and out of the hand of the kings, neither suffered they the sinner to triumph. Now when the time drew near that Mattathias should die, he said unto his sons, Now have pride and rebuke gotten strength, and the time of destruction and wrath of indignation. Now therefore, my sons, be ye zealous for the law, and give your lives for the covenant of your fathers. Call to remembrance what acts our fathers did in their time, so shall ye receive great honor and an everlasting name. Was not Abraham found faithful in temptation, and it was imputed unto him for righteousness? Joseph, in the time of his distress, kept the commandment, and was made Lord of Egypt. Phinehas, our father, in being zealous and fervent, obtained the covenant of an everlasting priesthood. Joshua, for fulfilling the word, was made a judge in Israel. Caleb, for bearing witness before the congregation, received the heritage of the land. David, for being merciful, possessed the throne of an everlasting kingdom. Elias, for being zealous and fervent for the law, was taken up into heaven. Ananias, Azarias, and Mishael, by believing, were saved out of the flame. Daniel, for his innocency, was delivered from the mouth of lions. And thus consider ye throughout all ages, that none that put their trust in him shall be overcome. Fear not then the words of sinful man, for his glory shall be dung and worms. Today ye shall be lifted up, and tomorrow ye shall not be found, because he is returned unto his dust, and his thought is come to nothing. Wherefore, ye my sons, be valiant, and show yourselves men in behalf of the law, and by it ye shall obtain glory. So we see here that our ancestors told our sons to be strong in the laws of the Most High, to fight and resist against the wickedness of society by walking upright and keeping the laws and commandments of the Most High. Further on, he said this, As for Judas Maccabeus, ye have been mighty and strong, even from his youth up. Let him be your captain, and fight the battle of the people. Take also unto you all these, those that observe the law, and avenge ye the wrong of your people. Recompense fully the heathen, and take heed to the commandment of the law. So he blessed them, and was gathered to his fathers, and he died in the 146th year, and his sons buried him in the sepulchre of his fathers at Modin, and all Israel made great lamentation for him. Now we're going to look at a historical source that talks about our ancestry during the Grecian captivity. Okay, on jewishvirtuallibrary.org, we read about the history that pertains to Grecians. After 2 centuries of serving as a vassal state to Persia, Judah suddenly found itself the vassal state of Macedonia, a Greek state. Alexander the Greek had conquered Persia and had in doing so conquered most of the world. For most of the world belonged to Persia. In a blink of an eye, it now fell to the Greeks. This Greek empire would last no longer than Alexander's brief life. After his death, altercations between his generals led to the divisions of his empire among three generals, really four. One general, Antigonus, and then later Ptolemy, inherited Egypt. Another, Seleucus, inherited Northeast Africa and Mesopotamia. After 2 centuries of peace under the Persians, the Hebrew state found itself once more caught in the middle of power struggles between two great empires, the Seleucid state, with its capital in Syria to the north, and the Ptolemaic state, with its capital in Egypt to the south. You also had the general of Lysimachus and Cassander. Okay, this is the one that's not mentioned here in this article. Then it says, once more, Judah would be conquered first by one and then by the other, as it shifted from being a Seleucid vassal state to a Ptolemaic vassal state, which is what we were just reading in First and Second Maccabees, First Maccabees chapter 1 and chapter 2. Between 319 and 302 BC, Jerusalem changed hands 7 times. Like all others in the region, the Jews bitterly resented the Greeks. They were more foreign than any other group they had seen. In a state founded on maintaining the purity of the Hebrew religion, meaning the laws, statutes, the commandments, the rules, and regulations of the Bible, the moral code of ethics that we had, it says the gods of the Greeks seemed wildly offensive. In a society rigidly opposed to the exposure of the body, the Greek practice of wrestling in the nude and deliberately dressing light must have been appalling. In a religion that specifically singles out homosexuality as a crime against Yahweh, the Greek attitude and even preference for homosexuality must have been incomprehensible. In general, though the Greeks left the Jews alone, adopted Cyrus' policy, they allowed the Jews to run their own country, declared the law of Judah was the Torah, and attempted to preserve Jewish religion. When Seleucus king Antiochus IV desecrated the temple in 168 BC, he touched off the Jewish result under the Maccabees for a brief time. Judah became an independent state again. This is what we just read in Maccabees chapter 2. Okay? So during this period, Jewish history takes place in several areas. In Judah, in Mesopotamia, and other parts of Northeast Africa. Also, as well as Egypt. For the diaspora or dispersion of the Jews had begun during the captivity or exile, and large, powerful groups of Jews lived all throughout the Persian Empire and later the Hellenistic kingdoms, meaning the Hellenistic Greek society. The Greeks brought with them a brand new concept, the polis or city-state. Among the revolutionary ideas of the polis was the idea of naturalization. In the ancient world, it was not possible to become a citizen of a state if you weren't born in that state. If you were born in Israel, you moved to Tyre or Babylon or Egypt. You were always an Israelite. Your legal status in the country you're living in would be a foreigner or a sojourner. The Greeks, however, would allow foreigners to become citizens in the polis or the city-state. It became possible all throughout the Middle East or Northeast Africa for Hebrews and others, like the Canaanites, the Phoenicians, to become citizens of states other than Judah. This is vital for understanding the Hebrew dispersion or diaspora. For the rights of citizens or near citizenship called politumata allowed Hebrews to remain outside of Judea and still thrive. In many foreign cities throughout the Hellenistic world, the Israelites formed unified and solid communities. Israelite women enjoyed more rights and autonomy in these communities rather than at home. So we see here, folks, that during the time that the Macedonians, the Greeks, came into owning our land, you had it separated by the Seleucid Empire and Hellenistic states with the other empires that was round about it, right? The Parthians, the Medes, the Persians, all of that, right? And we see here that our ancestors ended up forced to become Greek citizens. So it's the same thing like us in America. Initially, we had our own heritage, our own way of life. But once we were conquered by the Greco-Romans, the Europeans, we were forced now to become European citizens, American citizens, British citizens, French citizens. And through that process of assimilation, we generally lost our identity. This is why it's very important for us to study the laws of the Bible, because the laws of the Bible is what keeps our cultural integrity. The laws of the Bible is what keeps us connected to the covenant of our ancestors. Because remember, the reason we went into slavery was because we followed and worshiped the other gods of the other nations. We assimilated into other cultures, and God allowed us to be captive by the Babylonians, by the Persians and Medes, by the Greeks, by the Romans, and eventually to the Americas. Okay? The Arabs also, and the French, and the Spanish, and the Dutch, and the Portuguese, and the Chinese, and the Japanese. All these nations conspired together to put us in a captivity. So it's important for us to embrace our own culture so we can avoid the idolatrous practices of the other nations. So that way we can maintain cultural integrity and biblical principles of morality. Thank you for listening to the Forefront Radio. I'm your host, Alfie Levi. You can always find us on Instagram by The Forefront Express. You'll find us online. Just type The Forefront Radio in your search engine, and you'll be able to find our podcast. Thank you for listening, and shalom, peace, and blessings to you all.
These brothers don't know the Bible.
To whom pertaineth to whom pertaineth
What is pertaining?
Bring it out.
Belongs to.
The adoption and the glory
And the glory.
and the covenant.
Look, why you waiting? They brain gone like decapitation. No knowledge, no laws, God, they forsaken. Put on slave ships, not a cruise line, Jacob. No martinis for that long trip, stop playing. They change our name with hot flames branded on our faces. Throw our kids in dirty water, alligator baiting. 100 million dead people, blood on the pavement. You say Jesus, but I'm looking at these crackers like they Satan, nigga playing. They paying for their crimes, calling statute limitations. They saying that it ain't them, that it was their fathers. Isaiah 14 say prepare them for their slaughter. This for Mike Brown, Trayvon Martin, Eric Gardner. Babylon falling, fire burning arson. Christ coming back, real black like a charcoal. Burning up these heathen for the evils that they conjured.
It's for us, our eyes have yet failed, for our vain help. In our watching, we have watched for a nation they couldn't save us. They slay us and get off free like they made us. But I switch the game up, the black Messiah can save us.
I ain't finished. Esau soon will be diminished. Mount of Zion full of saviors, call them God's children. 144, Esau about to be a victim. Keep the laws, then we get them on the day of vengeance. Can I get a witness? Can I get a witness? Esau running for their life like it's LA Fitness. Revelation 18:6, double portion with them. Try to hide the caves, but they screaming, let's get them. He that leader with the sword, gonna die by the sword. They gonna be surprised, Black Christ coming here for war. They ain't heard this before. No more nice Negroes, time for real heroes. Esau be zero, just like Nat Turner. Turn me up, we gone. Turn me up, we gone. And I'm out, Israelite.
Now he's mad about the way we're teaching the Bible.
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not gonna take this anymore.
For us, our eyes have yet failed, for our vain help. In our watching, we have watched for a nation that couldn't save us. They slay us and get off free like they made us. But I switch the game up, the black Messiah can save Never us. Trust my enemies, I know what you did to me. Locked and loaded KJV, Revelations 1 and 3. Reading through these mysteries, our praises, now we got the keys. Unlocking hope and giving hope to those that seek the Holy Ghost. My holy folks gon' hold me down, exhorting on a daily basis. Prepare for temptation, crafty counsel just around the way. Snooze, you lose, you snooze, awaken, oh ye slugger. I see brothers killing brother, ministers, women raising monsters. That's why we crying loud on you busters. Scripting, ripping through the trenches in the seas of the ghetto. My people at a lower state, the prophets here to motivate. Isaiah 61 and 1, grinding up these broken hearts, reform them till they make it.
Thank you for listening to the Forefront Radio. We now have a Cash App. The link is in the description of the page here on anchor.fm, also on Spotify. We appreciate you listening in. We do have a few features that we are including now. We are selling a few products such as watches, perfumes, colognes, and other products will be available for our Israelite community as well as the general community of the population. We have a Facebook page. Just type in The Forefront Media and you'll be able to get updates of various shows that we drop when they do drop. Please do share this show if you like the show, and we do hope that you do love this show. And tune in for more episodes once we have them available. Thank you for listening to The Forefront. I'm your host, Afiel Levi Israel.